the why question, there's two aspects of it. The one is what we covered earlier, but the second part is why never brings healing. And I think that's that's a stumbling block for people is they get stuck with the why and they just wallow in it and they sink into depression and look inward, when the only healing we can have is looking at outward questions, looking at what's next. And I think what's next is that we share our stories. What's next is I went through this horrible thing, whether it was abuse, whether it was sickness, illness, loss, whatever the thing is that is hard for us, when rather than asking why, we ask what's next. And it's like, what's next is, how do I process this? How do I live with this? How do I understand this better? And then how do I share that? How do I start to open up and be able to say, hey, I went through this time, and it doesn't have to be on a podcast or a stage. It could be with a coworker or a friend.
Yeah.
And we're amazed at when we start to share our stories that make us feel broken or alone or separated, that we actually realize we're part of something bigger, that all of us are broken, that all of us are alone, that, you share a story of abuse and you realize the person you're talking to might have been abused and never spoken about it. And now you sharing it gives them a place to share it. And you guys connect on this deeper level. And then it's funny because you let go of the why question and you start asking what's next. And then you start seeing your journey and your pain and your suffering, the things you've gone through, start to have value and help others on their journey. And it's almost like then you get a why. It's like you let go of it, but you almost get that because you start to get healing and meaning in your pain, that it wasn't for nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, I've shared the story too about how Emily and I couldn't have kids, and we went through that process of asking why or why not. Why can't we? And it's okay to ask the question why. Mm-hmm. We're all going to do it, but don't get stuck on why. Why I think is the thing that helped me cultivate the right heart to take to the Lord. But initially, I just went to God with why.
With why?
Why are you not allowing this? Everyone else around us getting pregnant, but why? Why can't we? And so that process was years. It was like 4 years.
And it's hard. And again, though, if God came down and was like, Kevin, this is why you can't have kids, you're still in the same position.
I still can't have kids. Yeah.
Why doesn't bring healing? So even if we get our answer, it's like, okay, that's why.
Yeah.
What's next?
Yeah.
It's still the next question.
Yeah. And who knows why? Because I saw every specialist in the country, but as you fast forward in your life, which in hindsight, we don't know what the future holds. So I didn't know what the future held for our family, but we have Noah now. Noah's 8 years old. And, that came through a process as well of adoption. And we're just blessed to have him. And he's a huge, he's a massive part of our family. He's my son and Emily's son. So sometimes it's the why that leads us to the Lord. And then I think the Holy Spirit prompts us and allows us to kind of soften that and to get a posture that's like, God, I'm not really sure why now. And
I'm not really sure why, but I know I'm
up.
ready for whatever you have in store for me.
Yeah.
And for you guys, that was Noah.
Yeah. And I think for us, it was the peace as well. Before we knew what adoption was going to look like, we had a peace of not being able to have kids and kind of wrestling with that. And I think people sometimes have to wrestle with coming to grips with someone who's passed away that they've loved. And instead of saying, why did you not, God, save this person? Or why did you not heal them? We go and start with that. But then at the end, we kind of say, well, the truth is we're all going to die. But there's something bigger here that God would love to do. And that would be to save us eternally and to give us hope.
Yeah. And if we have that assurance, it's like to save us eternally, then it's not, we don't have to mourn like the world, that we can say, man, I miss that person. That it's not to take away from how much you miss spending time with them, but you are excited to see them again.
Yeah.
And that's huge.
Yeah. Huge. When I wrote the original, like outline of the series, it was really a passion of mine to take the gospel story and mirror that with the film. And so when you look through it, it really walks you through creation, fall, redemption, renewal, which is the story arc of the gospel. So the film is, first week is the film, the second week it's seeing beyond your walls. And so it's realizing, hey, maybe you have some walls built up, you're not quite ready to even see your story or God's, But then after you tear down the walls, you literally just go through seeing the goodness of God in your story, session 3, feeling your scars, which is the fall of man, and then finding healing and meaning in your scars, which is Christ's redemption for our lives. And so, after that's committed to being stretched, which is our commitment to the Lord. And so I love that the film and your story, because all of our stories mirror the gospel, it's pretty easy just to say, all right, this was your story. Let's just figure out a way that this matches what the gospel is like. And here's the reality. All of us have been created by God and ruined by sin and redeemed by the Son, if you know Jesus. So if you get in there and you discover your story, that's what you're going to see. And if you don't get excited about that, you're like, you just need to, I don't know.
We start seeing the gospel in all parts of our lives.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's cool is, if you look at any of our lives from a 30,000 foot view, I kind of look at it as the more zoomed out we get, the more connected we feel and realize that we are, that what seems like a unique experience that was only to us, we start realizing, okay, well, not everybody's been electrocuted, but everyone's experienced pain. And what is God doing in that pain? And then we start to realize like, hey, I have a story. We all have a story. And if we zoom out enough, we all have the same story, that God is telling his story of love and redemption in and through all of our lives all the time. But have we learned to look for it? Yeah. Like, give an example of like, what would you say, Kevin, your story arc in like a single moment? Like maybe you at 8 years old, trying cigarettes. Like, what is the story you've shared with me before that you tried cigarettes as a child? And so what's the connected story to the gospel in that?
Well, I mean, I think there's probably a lot of different connections, but I would look at it and just say I wanted to fit in. I wanted to try something cool. I had friends. We grew up in a country town, so a lot of redneck friends got cigarettes, stole them from the store, and I didn't. So I found this one, and when I tried it, I think I was just wanting to know what it was like, and at the core, I was trying to fit in. I wanted to belong. And so if you trace that back, that core sense of wanting to belong comes from God. That comes from the Lord,
He
right?
created us to belong. He created us to have community, and He created us to have fellowship with each other and with Him, not to be isolated and alone. So that creation aspect was, I want to fit in. I want to be a part of something.
Yeah.
And that part of something was the cool kids.
Yeah. And of course I would get made fun of if you didn't want to do it, or just get picked on, or you just felt like you weren't a part of the cool club. And
so creation, that right, the fall in there is obviously.
So what you end up feeling in the fall is the shame, and I end up feeling a sense of I'm not as good, or I'm not as valuable as them. And so in order to do that, I start to feel the death, right? So sin leads to death, and so I felt dead. On the outside, I was alive when I was playing certain sports, when I was around, but there were these moments where, I would get made fun of. Oh, you don't do that. You're like, oh, you're the good boy. You're the preacher boy. And they didn't realize how much that would hurt, because it hit me at my core of who God's created me to be. And all of us long to belong and have community. And so I felt dead. And that's what sin ultimately causes here on earth, right? We always talk about when you die, sin means that you're going to spend eternal death, not in heaven. And but we never really think about the fact that we're still alive on earth, but we were dead spiritually and emotionally, mentally. And so that's what it was like. That's the fall. And I felt my scars at 8 years old, even in that little scenario. But what most of the time happens is we want a savior. We want redemption. And so we will choose it on our own oftentimes. So I would fight against them, or I would get angry at them, and I would be offensive, or I would harbor this bitterness and unforgiveness towards them. And or I may even just try it, right? Just want to do it. And I would, potentially go down a bad path in my life. But either way, I'm looking for salvation, but I go about it in an imperfect way. And so that's when you start to realize that God has got a way. There's no way to kill sin. And so those relationships would get wounded and separated, and that's what sin does, is it destroys things, destroys our relationship with God vertically and every relationship horizontally. It's kind of just cataclysmic effect. And but Jesus comes in and restores us. And at 8 years old, I probably didn't get that restoration that I needed, but I do know that my parents did their best to be the hands and feet of Jesus and the voice of God in my life, to teach me that He loves me, teach me that Jesus has died on the cross for my sins. And so, but as you get older, you realize you need that truth at your core, because belonging, the struggle to belong, doesn't stop when we're 8. It's an ongoing thing throughout our lives. The jobs we have, the cars we drive, the clothes we wear, the phone we have, like everything is a comparison, right? Everything's kind of a belonging to your tribe, Apple, Android.
Yeah.
And so this is just kind of like God gives us a way that we can break out of this world and break out of this system where we're not defined by those things, or those, like our job. We're not defined by our job. We're not defined by how much money we have. Our value comes from knowing God.
Yeah,
that's it.
Absolutely. And then when we look at our stories, that for one, like you said, we have that creation arc. We have that, created by God, ruined by sin, saved by Jesus. We have that in points. That was a great example of how one little point in your life as an 8-year-old boy, what that looks like to discover your story in that. And there's thousands of those.
Yeah.
We can find that story in every single day, in every part of our life, in every stage of our life, bigger themes that we're like, oh, this was a theme in college, or this was a theme at this point in my life. And then single situations where you're like, why did I do that? Well, where's the gospel in that? Do you know how to find the gospel in that?
Yeah. And it's so cool to have this resource that people can spend time, not only do it, but you can do it with someone else. So you're going to be discovering your own, but you're going to be sharing and listening and hearing other people's stories. And that builds true, authentic community that honestly the church has struggled to know how to create, because most of our Bible studies and small groups have been built around studying the Bible, which is huge and important in a Christian faith. But I think story is a catalyst for discipleship. And this resource is going to be a great opportunity for people to experience true, real transformation and build community. Yeah,
so I hope everybody goes through it. I hope people dive into it. I hope they commit to it, because
they will.
This is something like, because I've been a part of small groups where I'm like, oh, it's a lot of work. They want me to do this homework, and you do it right before. And it's like, I would encourage you, if you go through it, if you miss a day of journaling, don't wake up and say, I'm going to do 5 journals today to catch up because it's Tuesday and our group meets tomorrow. Just show up at group and say, hey, I didn't journal this week, but don't skip them.
Yeah.
Just be a week behind in your journals and start journaling. And when you do your last session, you'll just have 5 more journals that you'll do the following week. But take time to just do it. Sit down. It's a system. Do 1 a day and take your time and go through. And the other thing you could do is, if you get behind, you got 7 days in the week and you got 5 journals a week. So, just if you're behind 6 entries over the next 3 weeks, you're doing 2 extra if you just do it every day. So, go through the journals, go through the workbooks, go through the questions. And at the end, you're going to know your story. You're going to know the gospel in your story. You're going to know the value in your story. You're going to understand people's story around you better. You're also going to understand how to draw out that story better. It's like, people are amazing, but we don't know how to interact with each other. Yeah. That we've built, especially here in America, we've built these walls that we want to look good. We want to look perfect. We want people to see the social media version of us, that we've taken 50 pictures on our phone and then we chose the very best one to show this casual, oh, I'm up here on this vacation, when really there's so much more that happened, but that's what we're choosing to let people see. Yeah. So we start to learn how to not just take our own guard down and be real, but realize that other people need to do that. Yeah. And as we start to do that with each other, we realize it's not so scary out there. It's not so scary to be real. It's actually refreshing.
It's very refreshing. Yes.
So I hope you guys go through it. I had a ton of fun getting to come on here with you, Kevin. And
before we break, I want to bring up the amputee event that we did with Bethany Hamilton's foundation, Beautifully Flawed. Beautifully Flawed's amazing organization. It's our second time to go through it, but this time we got to go to California. We had a blast. Yeah,
we had so much fun, and we built true community with those guys and girls.
They were amazing, man. Yeah. They changed our lives, man. Inspired us, and so if you know of anybody if you're listening, who is an amputee or has been burned, we are tasked, Matt and I, with helping Beautifully Flawed be able to find more guys and more girls that have been through some sort of struggle, traumatic injury, to go and be a part of that retreat. It was a week-long retreat. We were so blessed that they chose Scarred for Good curriculum to be the curriculum for the guys. I mean, how amazing was it to spend 5 days with those guys just diving deep?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty incredible, and it was so cool to see it work. Yeah. To see that there were guys that the first couple days were like closed off and I don't really talk about it, and everyone does it their own way, and okay, cool. That's okay. And then we start getting into sessions and you start to see them open up a little bit, and start to realize the value in processing their story and their trauma.
It was only the second time we'd gone through the Scarred for Good curriculum, you and I, with a group. And second day, when Kelly came up to me, he had started filling out some of the sessions, and he was like, man, I can't believe it's day 2. It's already changed my life so much.
Wow.
Like I broke down and started crying. I gave him a hug. I was like, dude, that means so much, right? Like, to know how much work and prayer and everything that we've put into the project, to see firsthand that it was changing someone's life on day 2. So shout out to all those guys. That was a fun trip.
Yeah, it was. We had a blast.
Hopefully it's in Hawaii next time.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, that's a wrap for today. Be sure to check out the link below. We'll have link and information about Scarred for Good, discovering the goodness of God in your story. Matt and I are so excited to release this. Please, if you have any questions, reach out, and we would love to start a conversation with you about having this resource at your church. Youth pastors, please share this around. This is a resource that you are not going to want to miss. Trust us.